What's up, everybody? This is Hater Radio. My name is Chris McLean. I'm here with my co-host Ian Gibson. How are you, Ian?
I'm doing really good.
So this is very last couple of shows here for the year. So we're getting to the nitty gritty here, and these games, one was kind of a blowout, but the other one really didn't disappoint. We only had two games, but I think we're getting the best two teams at the end of this, and we'll talk about that at the end. But I enjoyed these games regardless of the blowout of the Indiana game, but it was still enjoyable to watch because I like watching Indiana play because they're such a good, formidable team. So it's fun to watch. And then obviously that Miami Ole Miss game, it came down to the last play, and that last play, it could have even been maybe a defensive pass interference and got another even closer try at a touchdown. So we didn't get to see it, but it was still a great finish. So let's jump into it. The first game we had was Miami and Ole Miss. Ian, I want to hear your thoughts first.
So very clearly, if you look at the numbers and the stats, and especially the time of possession, you were wondering how this was a game in the first place, and that was very much the case. Miami multiple times should have put this game away. Especially it was 3-4 dropped interceptions that they literally had in their hands and they just could not secure it. Surprisingly, there were no turnovers when Ole Miss was having to desperation heave left and right towards the end of the game and was converting on. And Miami was, here's the thing. Miami clearly played well, but I still don't think this is a performance they're going to be entirely happy with because they really only turned it on and were running at efficiency in the fourth quarter. Now, that's the most important quarter to do it. So that way, when Ole Miss was starting to, do their counter punches, Miami was still able to take advantage of that. But the biggest thing was Miami was still playing what we've seen all year, run game, kind of high percentage passing game, make it third and manageable. I think they were 11 for 19 or something like that.
Yeah.
Third down conversions. But obviously the biggest stat was 40 minutes plus of possession time compared to Ole Miss. I think in the first half, well into the second quarter, Ole Miss only had 3-4 minutes of possession and maybe ran 8 plays. Now, credit, they made the most when Lacey hit that 80-yard touchdown run. But this was a game that Miami should have handled Ole Miss, but could not put them away. Now, they got the job done. They clearly, when it mattered most, they got it done. When it was that, goal line play, Carson Beck did the right thing, found everybody was shifting to the right because I don't think that was by design, but I definitely know a lot of offenses, when it's in the goal, goal to go, or if it's like a fourth and, hero time, usually they will shift the play to one side. So just in case nobody's open there, they'll have a dump out route or an escape route for the quarterback to run, which is what Carson Beck did. So very good play design there. But yeah, regardless, Miami, they got, like I said, got the job done. They looked like the better team. They just weren't putting up enough points. And clearly, we're going to mention this with Indiana. I don't think that's going to fly in the national championship, but they got away with it with Ole Miss. Ole Miss, credit, they did everything they possibly could towards the second half. They were taking advantage of Miami not, putting them to bed. And I think, part of it, Kawan Lacey was, injured through most of the game. And the running attack wasn't there, but Chambliss was still very, still looked really good in this one. But all in all, Miami, they looked like the better team. They were the better team in the end, and they got the win. It's just, I don't think it needed to be that close. There was a lot of blood pressure being raised in Coral Gables at the end of the game that was kind of unnecessary.
Yeah, the two things that stand out the most for me for this game was Kewan Lacey was hurt, into the first quarter. So he was basically a decoy for 70% of the game and I don't think he had a handoff until it was the fourth quarter late. And so it was basically no run game at all after that long 70 plus yard run that he had. And then also Ole Miss's defense they could not get off the field on third downs. Like you said, 11 of 19 conversions. They got to Beck sometimes, but it wasn't enough because Beck was able to hit Marion a ton of times, especially that one long touchdown. Tony took a tunnel screen for a touchdown in the fourth quarter as well. Outside of that, most of the other players didn't really do much. Both Marion and Tony had really good games. Tony, most of his receptions were screens. So again, they kind of limited him out in deeper routes. But I think that's more of like Miami, like doing shorter routes for him and letting Marion take the top off the defense seems to be the key there. And then Fletcher, again, another great game, 133 yards. And, honestly, Brown seems to be coming on for them. He had a decent game. It wasn't a great average, 3.9 yards, but he was able to get that touchdown and a couple of key plays for them, spelling Fletcher, because they ran the ball a ton. They ran the ball like 35, 36 times, and Beck ran the ball a couple of times as well on some scrambles. I will say that one play in I can't remember exactly where it was in the gameplay, but it was Tony on a 3rd and like 7, and he's dead to rights. The Ole Miss defender has his ankle.
Oh yeah.
The defender is coming at him, and I'm like at that point, like the guy didn't even have to go fast. All he had to do was just grab him and put him down, and he comes flying in there and totally misses Tony. And then Tony gets loose from the ankle tackle and gets the first down. Right there, if they can get the stop Ole Miss and force them into a field goal, maybe he misses. I don't know. Miami's kicker has been kind of suspect in the playoffs, and he missed one in this game anyways. But either way, they wouldn't have gotten the touchdown, and it would have been a field goal try. So they kept it to just 3 points. That was the difference in the game. That was the 4-point difference. So it's like, it's crazy how like one play was like emblematic of like, because Ole Miss's defense was just not good enough. It really was. It never was. Like I knew coming into it that it was never going to be able to make enough stops. Miami's offense is good. Tony and Fletcher are amazing players, and Beck is doing enough to win these games. But Ole Miss's defense just did not put up a big enough fight. It barely put up a big enough fight against Georgia. And they barely won that game. And they needed all their offense to do it. And, Chambliss had a tremendous run in this playoff. Like they destroyed Tulane, and then they looked really good on offense against Georgia. And they looked good in this game, and they had the touchdown to go ahead late. They just, again, couldn't get the stops. I think, we'll talk about this Indiana game on Wednesday because I'm not going to jump into that. But I just feel like, Indiana is going to be – it's going to be a whole different – because I feel like the whole key for me, and I'll talk about it on Wednesday specifically, it is like the Indiana-Miami are like two evenly matched teams. They're basically like mirror images of each other because they like to do the same things. Mm-hmm. But like, Indiana's just a better version of Miami, essentially. They do the same things, but they just do it better. And I'll talk about it more on Wednesday. But this game, Ole Miss could not get enough, could not finish it off. Again, the defense was a problem. I never thought that they were going to be good enough. I haven't thought Pete Golding was a good enough defensive coordinator since he was at Alabama. I never have been enamored with this guy. Like, I think as a head coach, he looked like he was doing the right things, pushing the right buttons, getting them in position. But as far as him being a defensive coordinator, I'm not sold on him. And that was the deficiency with this team. And it came to roost on Friday or Thursday night. So you have any more thoughts on this game before we move on to the next one?
Yeah, well, one thing to note too, Miami, I was joking with George. I said the devil works hard, but the Miami Fiesta Bowl curse works harder because, man, it was looking like it was going to be another moment where Miami just let another Fiesta Bowl slip through their fingers. But that didn't happen. They get their first Fiesta Bowl win, and Ole Miss, that was the thing too, is we knew like Ole Miss's best shot was to win in a shootout. And it that's what it came down to in the fourth quarter. But there were so many times they had Miami dead to rights on third down. That was a good example. But even when it wasn't third and short, you got to remember, look, if it's third and short with Miami, 9 times out of 10, they're going to convert. There's nothing you can do about that. But if it's third and 5+, that's when you got to make the stops. And they did it. I think that was the difference. They just could not get off the field. So, yeah, like I said, and like you mentioned too, that was the biggest thing, was that Ole Miss's defense just couldn't get off the field. And the longer that offense was out there, the more likely they were able to score. And credit, they dodged a lot of bullets because they had to settle for a couple field goals. But still, yeah, Miami, it was a Miami game. It's just Miami should have been able to put up more points. That's why I said the score was very misleading, because Miami was really handling them in the first half and then kind of let it slip in the second. But once the fourth quarter started, then they were able to counterpunch on offense.
Yeah, I mean, I think what stood out was the fact that like Miami only had 1 sack in the game on defense, and like Ole Miss was able to evade the pressure. Chambliss was a great job getting out of the pocket and hitting his receivers, and I felt like Miami's defense got exposed in this game. I think the like narrative so far has been like, oh, they're like this amazing defense, and they did not look that great in this game. Honestly, they were able to get stops on third down, which, credit to them, was huge. But Ole Miss was able to get 21 first downs on first and second down, so it didn't even really necessarily matter if they weren't even getting to third down a lot of times. It was 2 of 10, but they were still getting a ton of first downs and moving the ball tremendously well on this defense. And that was the thing, like coming into the game, it was like, oh, the defense might get some stops, but I always felt like Ole Miss was going to be able to score on them no matter what. It just was going to be Ole Miss's defense, and that was going to be the problem. And it was, they couldn't stop them. And, again, they were fortunate. Like you said, Ole Miss, Chambliss had a couple of balls that should have been intercepted. That one where it was Chambliss threw into double coverage, and it was in his hands. I don't know how he dropped it. It was pretty miraculous that he didn't catch it. And like, if he caught it, he had a ton of room. Like, he was going to run for like at least 40, 50 yards. But that happens. Beck got picked off, and there were, a couple plays Beck didn't look great on throw wise. I don't have any more thoughts. You ready to move on?
Yeah.
Okay, let's move on. Okay, Indiana, Oregon, and the crowd was like 90 to 95% Indiana, cream and crimson, and it was remarkable because I don't think we as college fans, I mean, I realize it as a college basketball fan because I've always known Indiana to travel well wherever they go in the tournament for basketball. So I always knew they were a well-traveled fan base. But it's like for college football fans that don't really follow college basketball as well, it was a huge shock for a lot of people. There was a ton of tweets talking about how like, whoa, there's so many people. I'm like, well, I mean, they're the largest alumni base in the entire FBS. They have a lot of money, and they've just never been good at football. And now they are. You got like Mark Cuban putting in money into the team. Like, this team is dangerous now. And to the game itself, first play of the game, Pons, pick 6, takes it back, touchdown. And it was just like, you knew, like, I was like, uh-oh, this is going to be a rout, like, from that moment on. And Indiana was just the better team. Like, they dominated in a lot of ways with the trenches, with the D-line getting to Dante Moore constantly. I mean, Dante had nothing but pressure on him besides the pick six. Then he had 2 fumbles that resulted in scores. So it was 21 points off 3 turnovers. And then Indiana didn't turn the ball at all. They didn't turn over the ball at all. Mendoza had a fumble at one point. He had 2 fumbles, and they both got recovered by Indiana, so they got lucky there. Indiana was 11 of 14 on third downs. That is just ridiculous. That's like 80% conversion, which is remarkable. Indiana only had 60 plays in this game. That's how much of a butt whooping it was. They win 56-22. Indiana only allowed 1 sack. They were able to get to Dante Moore 3 times. They didn't even have a ton of yards because they had such short fields. They even got a blocked punt at one point near the end of the game. They only had 362 total yards. That's not a lot for 56 points, but they dominated in every phase of this game to the point where Oregon just couldn't do anything. And it wasn't like Oregon is a terrible team. They were 13-1 coming into this game and looked like they were going to be a formidable foe and put up a fight, but they didn't do anything. I mean, this Indiana team is so proficient at every detail of the game. I've been hearing rumors about cheating and whatnot and hacking into the systems that these teams use for plays and game planning. I get that. I guess, I don't know if there's actually fire to that smoke. We'll find out. But at the same time, they still need to be able to make the plays happen, in which Indiana is still making the plays regardless of knowing where they go or not. And I don't know. It's impressive because Cignetti is just doing something that's unheard of. Indiana was nowhere to be found 2 years ago, 2.5 years ago, and now they're literally on top of the world. They are 1 win away from winning this championship, and it's just remarkable. It is such a amazing thing to see. I've been a huge fan of Cignetti when Florida was going through potentially firing Billy Napier. Cignetti's name got brought up a lot a year and a half ago and a year ago. And, I was looking into him and, the more and more I looked into him, I was like, man, this guy knows what he's doing. He had great success every stop he had. Elon, James Madison, Indiana, he just, was getting better and better. The players he brought from James Madison to Indiana, Surratt, Cooper, Becker, they brought in Mendoza, a lot of the defensive players. I mean, it is a bevy of riches with these guys because they're older guys, so they're more experienced, but they are just phenomenal players. And it has been striking to see this ascension from last year where it was becoming a thing. And then they lost a couple of games and got beaten by Notre Dame in the playoff to this year. It's not even close. They're literally just dominating everyone that they play outside of the Ohio State Big Ten championship game. And then the Iowa game as well. And the Penn State game. So then there's a couple games that they've been close, but the Penn State game was on the road. The Iowa game was on the road. The Big Ten championship game, I don't know. It was just, I felt like it was 2 good teams. And I still think that Ohio State played well against Miami, but that score was looked a little bit inflated. It was a little closer than what that final score was. But regardless, Indiana with this win, 56-22, just dominates. And, they'll look to Monday next week to crown themselves as championship in Miami. But Ian, your thoughts on this game?
I'll say you've officially made it as a college football juggernaut when other fan bases are saying you're cheating.
Yeah.
So congrats, Indiana. You're at that point. So obviously this game, it's just Indiana Death Starring everybody right now. They have been on a mission, poised, and we mentioned we thought this game was going to be difficult, and we had every reason to believe to. Oregon and Indiana, when it was in Eugene, was a tough fight, and Indiana came up big at the end. But when it mattered in this game, and we also mentioned too how often, how hard it is to win 2 games against the same team in this college football season. So we had every right to think like, oh, you know what, maybe Oregon can pull this off, or maybe this will be another close game. But Indiana was literally first play, pick 6, read like a book, and they take it into the end zone. Now, credit Oregon at the beginning had a fantastic drive afterwards. They were able to go down the field, score the touchdown, and tie it.
Yeah.
After that, Indiana was not playing around. They were like, okay, now we have to now it was the equivalent of like when you like lean forward in your chair when in a video game and it gets too serious. That's what Indiana did. And they just totally annihilated Oregon, not only on offense, but defense too. Those 3 turnovers, obviously, in the first half. The 2 fumbles that set up where it was like, they were at the 5-yard line. And at that point, it was all but over. Indiana had that one in the bag. There's nothing more. I mean, it's beating the dead horse or sounding like a broken record here with Indiana, especially in this game. They just looked unstoppable. There wasn't a whole lot Oregon could do to, stop them. They tried. I'll give them that. They did try. But all in all, Indiana looked and played as the better team. As you mentioned, the 3rd down conversion was insane, but a lot of that was thanks to, just these insane catches. That's the other thing, too, is I've never seen a team where it came down to a 50-50 ball and every time, the receiver catches it. It's not even incomplete. It's just the receiver will catch it. It is, really impressive. So, like you said, Indiana steamrolls Oregon. For Oregon, I mean, again, it sucks because, again, you're falling short of what you want, and that goal is another national championship. And again, you end on a blowout loss in the playoff. But if there's any solace, I mean, that has been everybody this season to Indiana. People are making jokes now, like Penn State's going to hang a banner of like, for right now, closest, game with Indiana. And Florida State was like, last team to hold Mendoza to a game without a touchdown was when he was at Cal last season. So, all in all, Indiana, walks into the, national championship here. And I know Miami's taking notes because they got to figure out how to stop this almost unstoppable team. But they have shown they have the defense to do it. If there's any defense to do it, it's them. And it's time for them to step up. The last thing I want to note, this is just a personal thing. I know I've mentioned it to you, totally off track, but I get obviously the huge crowd of Indiana and all that, but I thought it would have made more sense if like that was the Fiesta Bowl and then Miami and Ole Miss got the Peach Bowl, both geographically and history, because the Peach Bowl always was SEC versus ACC, and then like the Fiesta Bowl was always a Big 10 or a Big 12 team or Pac-12 team. So that was just one thing I noted too was, I don't know, I thought that would be cooler if, instead of like announcing the bowl games, you kind of like, you have the bracket and then you are like, oh, this, the higher seed is an SEC team, or this matchup is more historic to a Rose Bowl, a Sugar Bowl, a Peach Bowl, then you put them in that. That's just a complete tangent that I guarantee you nobody cares about right now, but just last thing I wanted to mention.
Well, I think a lot of it is like, even with like the NCAA basketball tournament, it's, they predetermine where these, like where the seeds are, what region. So it's like, it makes it easier. So like they can coordinate stuff. If they're doing something like that, where you're like, they wait until they decide. Because like, think about Oregon, they were in Miami 2 weeks ago, and then probably flew back to Eugene, and then had to fly back to Atlanta. And like, if they won, then they'd have to fly back to Eugene and then fly back to Miami again. So it's like, it like with the coordination with all this stuff, I'm sure because it's you got to think about how many people involved with it. It's like the 85 or 100 whatever plus players, the huge assistant coach roster, then you got staff, equipment managers, you got cheerleaders, you got all this stuff, and it's like it is a logistical nightmare. And like I get what you're saying because it's like more towards the the traditional setups, but it's just they have to finagle it away that it works best for everyone, and they have to do that beforehand. They can't. I mean, they can't just kind of willy nilly it. They have to like really understand where it is, so that everyone, they have a definitive plan, so they have these logistics figured out ahead of time.
And me as a purist, just like
I know, and I get it. I get your argument.
It really isn't a big deal. It's just like the whole thing.
Yeah. Do you have any more thoughts on this game?
Man, good for Indiana to have a home game in a playoff spot. So, yeah, that crowd was remember the game this year with Penn State and Oregon? It was the one Oregon fan in the sea of white. It was that, but with red now. So, all in all, Indiana, once again, their biggest win in program history, and they're one win away from the legit biggest win in their program's history in football.
Yeah, and they may go down as one of the best teams of all time.
Yeah, that's the other thing too. Is like I don't think you're gonna. Again, we don't know with like what team is the best or whatever like that in college football. You have the 2019 LSU, 2001 Hurricanes, 2008 Gators, 95 Nebraska, but like you cannot deny this is one of the most dominant teams in college football history. Maybe not, you can argue best or whatever, but like in terms of just completely annihilating teams, there's like 2019 LSU is the only other team I've seen have this happen where it just didn't matter what you threw at them. They're just going to obliterate you. And even if it's a close game, they find a way to win.
Yeah. I mean, cause like the last two games, they're like 94 to like 20 or something like that, or like 28, like between the two scores. And it's like, that is an absurd number between two really good teams that they've played, and they just obliterated them. And like as far as history goes, if you compare them to LSU, LSU 2019 didn't really have a good defense, and they gave up a lot of points, which I feel like if LSU and Indiana were to go up against each other, those two teams, I feel like Indiana was going to be able to score points, and their defense would be able to do enough to slow down LSU just enough, and that Indiana would probably score at least 35 points on them probably. And so would LSU 2019 be able to score 35 plus on Indiana's defense? I mean, no one's been able to yet so far, so I wouldn't assume they would be able to. But as far as like other historical teams, I feel like that Miami team would be pretty strong against them, because that was that 2001 team had huge NFL talent on it. I will say that one game that they had against Boston College kind of weakens their case a lot, but that was about the only game that they looked soft in. They destroyed Nebraska, destroyed Vautech, destroyed Washington. I like that Florida 018 a ton. Like I've always said, I always felt like just I am impartial because I'm a fan of the team, but like watching them up close, when I watched them in that LSU game that year, because LSU was highly ranked in that game, and Florida, that game wasn't even close. It was like a 50 to 20 game, and it was just, it was from the moment, it was what Tebow threw that tip pass to Percy
Harvin,
that was the first 5 or 6 plays of the game, and it was just on from there. And and they obliterated teams that year, and they played Alabama, which was number one, and then played Oklahoma, which was number one, and or number two. And Oklahoma at that point had one of the best offenses ever,
At that time, they were the highest scoring offense in college football history.
And they held them to 14 points. So
yeah.
I don't know. And there was a ton of talent. What?
Sorry. The other thing to note with all these like great games or great teams is you always say like, oh, the teams, they had these players, but you got to remember, if you're really going to be comparing them, who had, I mean, let's be real. Okay. 2019 LSU had Ed Orgeron. 2001 had Larry Coker. This Indiana team has Kurt Signetti. What team do you think is going to be better coached?
Yeah, but then Urban was the coach of 08 Gators. So
and then you can argue any of the Alabama teams had Nick Saban.
Yeah, so I mean, I think Signetti stands out. I'm curious to see where this goes with Signetti because, you know, he is so good at what he does. This team is so well coached, and they don't commit turnovers. They don't commit penalties. They're just, it's honestly, it's kind of remarkable how good this team is. It's almost too good to be true. And I think that's why people are so like, you know, leaning towards the conspiracies of the cheating stuff, because it's like, it feels like it's too good to be true. And maybe it will be. Maybe we'll find out and whatever. Who knows? But I just feel I enjoy watching this team play. I feel like it's a good brand of football. I feel like the offense is fun. You know, they can do a lot of things. You know, they can throw the ball deep if they need to. Surratt is one of the most like efficient route runners and technical wide receivers, because he doesn't do like a ton of like end arounds or whatever. He's just a route running machine, and he like gets open, and even if he's not open, if the defender's all over him, he still catches the ball. Surratt is got to be one of the best wide receivers I've seen in a long time. And, you know, we have Jeremiah Smith out there, and I still think Surratt is up there. Like he's going to be getting a ton of money in the NFL. He's got to be a high draft pick. There's no way he's not. And then Mendoza, some of these, he had like, what do you have? Like 6 incompletions the last 2 games. And he had like 5 touchdowns this game. And I don't know the other game. There's at least 3. So he had like 8 touchdowns to like 6 incompletions. Just super efficient. And the touch and the throws, like, man, it just looks so nice. It's like such a perfect ball, and he's athletic enough to get loose and to make plays. The kid's just really good. And the funny thing is, like, I think if he's put in a situation where he needs to throw the ball more, I think he can put up bigger numbers. But this team didn't necessarily need it. They ran the ball a ton. They got turnovers for short fields. You know, special teams made plays. So, like, you know, I feel like that's the case as well with this team, that they can, you know, just get the advantages through that. And it's crazy. Do you have any more thoughts, or I think we're done?
Yeah, I mean, there's not much what to say about Indiana just dismantling Oregon.
So
we're playing duck hunt.
Yeah, we'll talk about more about the Miami Indiana game on Wednesday, but that's the show, y'all. We're down to the last 2 shows. We're gonna have Wednesday, 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific. Sorry, and it'll be we'll do the preview show for the championship game. It'll be me and Ian. And then on Monday next week, so a week from tomorrow, the 19th will be the championship game. We will do a live show starting around the end of the 3rd quarter for the rest of the game. And we will like recap the game, talk about it, talk about some other stuff. And that'll be the last show. So we are dangerously close to the end of the year. And I'm excited because I'm ready to take a little time off from this stuff, but I love it. I still love it. It gets it's a lot of work. So look for that. So Wednesday's show, Monday next week, a week from Monday, that'll be the last show. And we'll have potentially Seth Varnador. I have not confirmed yet with him, but he said yes the last time I talked to him. So hopefully he comes on as well. So it'll be the three of us. But that's the show. Ian, where can they reach you on socials?
Yeah, at X, Instagram, or at X, it's at G5 Gibson. And at Instagram and YouTube, it's at G_Gator_G.
For our socials, just type in Hater Radio. It comes right up. Go on to haterradio.com for all of our articles. I should have one coming up. I might do something about like a recap of the game or just something about just the sport in general on the next couple of days. But thank you for tuning in. We'll talk to you on Wednesday. Take care, y'all.